The housekeeper moved quietly through the grand mansion, her steps careful and measured on the polished marble floors. The late afternoon sunlight streamed through the massive windows, casting long shadows across the living room, but she paid no attention to the golden light or the faint scent of expensive flowers in the air. Her focus was on the task at hand, arranging the scattered papers on the mahogany desk, dusting the ornate shelves, and making sure every vase was perfectly aligned. No one needed to know the little details she took pride in. No one ever noticed her, except for the occasional nod from the chauffeur or a brief acknowledgement from the cook in the kitchen. She had worked in this mansion for over 3 years, and in that time, she had become almost invisible. The household staff rarely spoke to her, and the family she served barely remembered her name. To them, she was just the housekeeper, a shadow moving silently through corridors, a background figure in their lives of wealth and indulgence. But in her own mind, she was a master of her craft, taking satisfaction in the small triumphs of her work. The folded linens, the sparkling glassware, the polished floors, they were her world, and she ruled it completely. Today, she had a new task: organizing the private library. The library was the crown jewel of the mansion, a room with towering shelves filled with rare books, manuscripts, and photographs that captured generations of the family's history. She had always been intrigued by the place, but it had always been off-limits, a forbidden realm where only the family and their closest associates were allowed. But today, the matriarch had given her a rare privilege, just for a few hours, to sort through a collection of old letters that had been left in disarray. As she opened a drawer, a small envelope fell into her hands. It was unsealed, yellowed with age, and bore no indication of who it belonged to. Curiosity piqued, she hesitated. She knew she shouldn't open it, that it wasn't her place to read someone else's correspondence. But the temptation was too strong. Carefully, she unfolded the fragile paper, her fingers trembling slightly as she read the first few lines. The letter was scandalous. It spoke of secrets, betrayals, and a family scandal that had been buried for decades. Her eyes widened as she read on, the story unfolding like a hidden drama she had never expected to witness. Names were mentioned, relationships hinted at, and long-forgotten disputes detailed with meticulous clarity. The housekeeper felt a rush of adrenaline. This was more than just a letter, it was a revelation, a glimpse into the private lives of people who had always seemed untouchable. She barely noticed the passage of time, completely absorbed in the contents of the envelope. Her imagination ran wild as she pictured the events described, the arguments, the reconciliations, the heartbreaks. She imagined herself standing in the midst of it all, unseen but knowing everything, holding the power of knowledge that no one else possessed. And then she heard it, a sound so subtle she almost thought she imagined it at first. The quiet creak of the door opening behind her. Her heart leapt into her throat. She froze, the letter still clutched in her hand. "Miss Thompson," a voice said, calm but carrying an edge of authority. She turned slowly. The boss was standing there, tall and impeccably dressed, his expression unreadable. She hadn't even heard him enter. Her first instinct was to apologize, to hide the letter, to explain that she wasn't supposed to be meddling. But something held her back. Something about his gaze. It was sharp, perceptive, and somehow gentle all at once. I was just organizing the letters," she stammered, trying to sound composed. He raised an eyebrow, stepping closer. "Organizing them? Yes, but you were reading them." Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. I didn't mean to, I just." He held up a hand, stopping her before she could spiral into panic. "It's all right," he said quietly. "I know why you read them." She blinked, confused. You know." He nodded. "Yes. And I also know that you didn't do it to cause trouble. You did it because you care. Because you pay attention to things no one else notices." Her heart raced, but not from fear this time. Curiosity mingled with awe. Why would you say that?" He smiled faintly, a small but genuine smile that softened his usually stern features. "Because you have a gift, Miss Thompson. Most people think of housekeeping as a simple job: dust, clean, polish. But what you do, it's more than that. You notice the details, the small things, the patterns. You see what others overlook. And today, you saw something that others have tried to hide for years." She couldn't believe what she was hearing. The boss, The one person in the household who was distant, almost untouchable, was praising her. Her hands trembled slightly, and she felt a warmth she had never known, a validation of all the quiet work she had done for so long. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. I need you to understand something. What you found, it's not just a letter. It's a key to understanding a family history that has been buried under pride, fear, and secrecy. And you've been entrusted with it, even if you didn't know it. Her breath caught. Entrusted me, yes, he said firmly. Because you are honest, discreet, and intelligent. You won't misuse this knowledge. You will keep it safe, and perhaps, one day, it will be needed. She swallowed hard, feeling a mixture of awe and fear. The weight of responsibility pressed on her shoulders, yet it also ignited a strange sense of purpose. For the first time in her life, she felt seen, not just as a housekeeper, but as someone capable of understanding, judgment, and trust. He studied her for a moment, then gestured toward the desk. Sit down. Let me tell you the story behind this letter, so you understand what you're holding. She obeyed, sitting on the edge of a leather chair, her hands still clutching the envelope. He began to speak, and as he did, the room seemed to shrink around them, the world outside fading away. He told her of the family feud that had split generations apart, of betrayals that had shaped the present, of decisions made in secrecy that had affected lives in ways no one could imagine. Every word he spoke added layers to the story she had only glimpsed in the letter, and she listened with rapt attention, absorbing every detail. Hours passed unnoticed. When he finally paused, she realized she had been holding her breath. Do you understand now why this letter is so important? He asked. Yes, she whispered. I understand. He nodded, satisfied. Good. Because this knowledge must remain protected. No one else can know. And you are now part of that protection. Her mind reeled. The housekeeper, invisible for so long, now entrusted with a secret that could change everything. She felt a surge of pride, mixed with a heavy responsibility. But beneath it all, there was excitement, a feeling she hadn't allowed herself to experience in years. As she carefully placed the letter back in its envelope, he said, You've done more today than most people could ever dream of. You've seen beyond the surface, beyond appearances. That's rare. That's valuable. She looked at him, eyes wide. I don't know what to say. Then don't say anything, he replied gently. Just remember that sometimes, what seems like a small act, reading a letter, noticing a detail, can have a profound impact. And today, you've done something extraordinary without even realizing it. She nodded, feeling a tear slip down her cheek, quickly brushing it away. The room was quiet, but in that silence, she felt a connection, a recognition that transcended her role as a housekeeper. She had been invisible, yes, but now she was noticed in a way that mattered more than any paycheck or simple acknowledgement could convey. He gave her a small, approving nod before turning toward the door. You may continue your work now, Miss Thompson. But remember, some doors open only once in a lifetime. And you've stepped through one today. She watched him leave, her heart pounding, her mind racing. For the first time, she understood that her life had shifted, that her ordinary days of cleaning and organizing had led her to something extraordinary. She sat for a long moment, letting the reality sink in. Then, with renewed purpose, she returned to her work, each movement precise and deliberate, each action imbued with the knowledge that she was no longer just a background figure. Hours later, when the family returned home, nothing seemed different to them. The house looked immaculate, the papers organized, the library in perfect order. No one suspected the quiet revolution that had occurred in their absence. No one noticed the invisible housekeeper who now carried the weight of a family's hidden truths. And yet, in the quiet of the mansion, in the spaces between the grand furniture and polished floors, a shift had taken place. The housekeeper moved with a new confidence, her steps lighter, her head held higher. She had discovered a hidden world and had been entrusted with its secrets. And deep down, she knew that her life would never be the same again. Because sometimes, it is in the quietest, most overlooked places that the most extraordinary things happen. And sometimes, the person who thinks no one is watching is the very person everyone should notice. The housekeeper smiled to herself, the envelope safely tucked away in her pocket. She continued her work, but now with a sense of purpose, a sense of power, a sense of belonging that she had never known before. She knew the boss had seen it all, and what followed was not just recognition, but a profound transformation, one that would echo through her life in ways she could only begin to imagine. And so, the mansion remained the same to the world outside, grand, opulent, and indifferent. But inside, something had changed forever. The housekeeper, once invisible, had become indispensable, not because of her job title, but because she had dared to see, dared to understand, and dared to act. And in that daring, she had discovered the extraordinary in the ordinary, and the hidden power of being truly noticed.